What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. Well, as you likely know, most people were expecting a meaningful vote on Boris Johnson's new deal or treaty today, but I'm fairly sure it won't happen since it goes against convention and Burkuck is in charge. He is not likely to side with Boris Johnson because he only breaks convention for the Remoaners, therefore don't expect too much in terms of the extension being scrapped just yet. Obviously, that means Monday being the Brexit D-Day many thought Saturday would be, is once again probably not going to materialise either. In true UK Parliament fashion, dither and delay is the way it goes. Much like the last 3 years, though to be honest, I really don't want this deal or treaty to go through anyway, but if Parliament has a say on anything today, you can be sure it won't be good news for Brexit. Betraying the people is the only thing Parliament seems to do these days. There are various reports out today that started last night claiming the Remoaners, including former Tory rebels Grieve, Hammond and Letwin, will back Labour and SNP amendments that will call for a second referendum and possibly a customs union to be tacked on to Boris Johnson's treaty, making Boris Johnson's somewhat improved but still mediocre rehashed deal as bad as Maybot's original one, if not worse. There has been talk for a few days now about these Remoaners passing amendments to demand a second referendum, as I said in the live stream last week. But it seems today is the day we might actually see it happen, because these people clearly don't care about democracy. But I will point out, the government has stated even if the Commons votes for a second referendum, they will ignore it. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. Now, a few outlets are reporting on this, but we will take a look at the Telegraph's article on the second referendum and customs union reckon amendments that might well be tabled later today, as I said, in the Remoaner MP's latest attempts to stop Brexit, since the court case today will likely fail because Boris Johnson complied with the Benn Act. Even Gina Miller's lawyer pointed that out earlier. So we should not have to worry about Boris being in contempt of court or any of that nonsense, regardless of what the little gargoyle Joanna Cherry has to say. Now, the Telegraph are saying Brexit deal latest news, Boris Johnson braced for showdown with Burko over second attempt at meaningful vote. Boris Johnson is braced for a showdown with John Burkuck amid fears that the Commons Speaker could reject a fresh attempt to hold a meaningful vote on the Brexit deal. The Speaker will this afternoon rule whether a second attempt to pass the government's motion can go ahead following the aborted attempt on Saturday. I'm guessing that he won't, as it's Burko. However, he is expected to rule that the same motion cannot be moved again, meaning that Mr Johnson will have no choice but to begin trying to push through the legislation required for the UK to leave the EU. Whilst ministers argue that MPs have not had a chance to express their support for the deal, critics have pointed out that the motion has already passed, albeit amended and without a vote, due to the Tories abstaining. Urging Mr Burkuck to side with the government this morning, Rishi Sunak, the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, said MPs should be given the chance to show they respect the result of the referendum. They don't want that chance because they all know they don't respect it, and we all know it as well. But there are certain people out there who are not really sure what's going on in regards to Brexit, and these Remoaner MPs definitely don't want to show them that. What people need is a substantive vote, he told BBC Radio 4's Today programme. Yes, they do, but the substantive vote that they need is a general election to clear these Remoaners out of Parliament and get rid of the traitor Burko. It's giving Parliament the opportunity to more positively affirm its support for this deal, which is something that needs to happen. I think people are crying out to see that, and they would find it odd if some procedural technical device meant we weren't able to have that vote. Yes, because some procedural technical devices are only generally used by the Commons when it comes to stopping what people voted for, i.e. Brexit, SO24s, you know, the Benn Bill. Should Mr Burkuck block the motion, Mr Johnson is expected to begin pushing the withdrawal agreement bill through Parliament. The first vote is expected to take place on Tuesday, when MPs will vote on the programme motion, which sets out the timetable for passing the legislation. However, Downing Street is braced for Remainer MPs to table a series of so-called wrecking amendments, including proposals for a second referendum and a customs union, as I said in the introduction to this video. Both amendments are backed by Labour, but government insiders are most concerned about the customs union bid, which could gain the backing of independent MPs and a number of the ex-Tory rebels. Should it pass, Mr Johnson could be forced to pull the legislation, in turn increasing the chances of EU leaders granting the Brexit extension requested by Parliament. Now, something this newspaper is not saying there is that by doing that and Boris pulling this legislation and therefore pulling the deal perhaps, would make a no-deal Brexit far more likely. So Parliament would be in turn shooting itself in the foot and giving us what we wanted. So maybe Boris is hoping that the customs union bid or the second referendum bids go through so they can pull the legislation. Who knows? Separately, the Prime Minister faces a legal challenge in Scotland today over the legality of his decision to urge EU leaders to ignore the letter seeking an extension. Of course, this is relating to the Joanna Cherry gargoyle case up in Scotland, remoaning as she always does. Remoan! Scotland's most senior judge, Lord Carloway, and 2 other judges will hear the allegations brought by Remain lawyers. However, Lord Panic QC, who represents campaigners against Boris Johnson in the Supreme Court, i.e. Virginia Miller, has this morning said he believes Mr Johnson about complied with the law. So there you have it, we're once again at the mercy of Burcuck and the Remoaners, as is Boris Johnson and his mediocre deal that could become really terrible with amendments, as we know what the Remoaners are like. But aside from that, we have this, which is today's order paper or business for the day. 1. Section 13B of the European Union Withdrawal Act 2018, up to 90 minutes. The Prime Minister. That this House approves for the purpose of Section 13(1)(b) of the European Union Withdrawal Act 2018 the following documents laid before the House on October 19th, 2019. The negotiated withdrawal agreement titled Agreement on the Withdrawal of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland from the European Union and the European Atomic Energy Community. 2. The framework for the future relationship titled Political Declaration, setting out the framework for the future relationship between the European Union and the United Kingdom. The unilateral declaration by the UK titled Declaration by Her Majesty's Government of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland concerning the operation of the democratic consent in Northern Ireland provision of the Protocol on Ireland, Northern Ireland. Notes. The Speaker plans to make a statement on proceedings on this motion immediately after defence questions. Amendment A. Ian Blackford, Kirsty Blackman, Stephen So-and-so, Joanne Cherry, the bunch of Remoaners. I'm not going to read out all of their names, but we have a bunch of Remoaners signing up to this Amendment A that says, line 1, leave out from that to end and add, this House declines to approve the withdrawal agreement and future framework, calls for the Prime Minister to secure an extension under Article 53 of the Treaty on European Union until at least 31st of January 2020 for the purpose of holding an early general election before the end of the extension period. So there you have it. This amendment wants to change the first line that I will reread again. It says, that this House approves for the purpose of Section 13(1)(b) of the European Union Withdrawal Act 2018 the following documents laid before the House on October 19th, 2019. They want to change it to, this House declines to approve the withdrawal agreement and future framework, calls for the Prime Minister to secure an extension under Article 53 of the Treaty on European Union until at least the 31st of January 2020. For the purpose of holding an early general election before the end of the extension period. So what that means there is they're going to decline to approve the withdrawal agreement and future framework and force Boris Johnson to get an extension until the 31st of January 2020 so that a general election can be held, which seems really counterproductive to what they want. Like, the Remoaner parties are not going to win a general election. Boris Johnson is going to end up with a majority, in which case he can either pass this deal or he can just take us out with no deal. Hopefully it's the latter, but I'd be more inclined to think that he would go with his deal. In his mind it would be the less nuclear option, though to Brexiteers it's pretty nuclear. But there you have it. So they are planning on a second referendum motion, which may come tomorrow, not necessarily today, but today is still possible. Who knows with these people? Burcuck will add new amendments to it if he feels at any given time of day. It doesn't matter if he's allowed to do it or it's constitutionally correct, he will do it anyway. He spits in the face of the Constitution regularly. So guys, don't expect good news today, just expect more bad news, possible delay, the end of this withdrawal agreement and future framework for now at least, and a general election maybe in December or January. Now, I'm umming and ahhing about this because I really don't want an extension, but I also don't want Boris Johnson's deal to go through. So it's really put Brexiteers in a shit position because absolutely none of us want an extension, but many of us, if not most of us, do not want this Boris Johnson deal to go through. We would rather he got a majority and took us out on no deal. And there's no guarantee that if he wins an election, he goes out with no deal. Even though I'm sure Farage will be chomping at the bit to make sure he does, or at least severely waters down the political declaration. So yeah, don't expect the good news about Brexit if you wanted the deal to go through, which most of you probably didn't. And don't expect any good news about there being no delay to Brexit. I expect with this amendment today that likely will pass, an extension is coming until at least the 31st of January 2020, if not December 2020. So guys, be prepared for that and be prepared to be extremely pissed off with it. Well, I'm going to end the video there, guys. I want to thank the channel's PayPal, Patreon and Subscribestar members for supporting the channel, along with everyone who watches my videos. All of my social media links will be down in the description below, including the channel's Discord server, so check them out. Remember to let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe with the notification bell and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one.
Parliament is a dead parliament. It should no longer sit. It has no moral right to sit on these green benches. They don't like the truth. Twice they have been asked to let the electorate decide upon whether they should continue to sit in their seats, while they block 17.4 million people's votes. Parliament is a disgrace, but they're too cowardly to give it a go. But the time is coming. The time is coming, Mr. Speaker, when even these turkeys won't be able to prevent Christmas.
Owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires, and that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.